I don't ever plan my work. I don't sketch anything. I take the piece of clay and I just go in the studio and whatever comes out, comes out. It's kind of hard to describe because I don't want to say easy for me. I want to say it's just very natural. Um, my hands just does the job. And then it's a lot of people when they see my work in person, they feel different types of emotions. Like it evokes emotion because it comes from a emotional place for me.
Sure.
It's very meditating for me when I work with clay. Like I lose track of time. I zone out. I don't. It's very enjoyable for me the entire process. So it's really hard to describe.
Jesus, the Zen warrior.
So the first question I have for you after like thinking about it, um, what makes like in your conception of art and what you do and how you create, what
Mhm.
is like what is the most magnificent thing you've created or want to create in within your artwork, within your style?
Um, I feel like I've recently been discovering more of my art and the type of art I want to create. So, one big vision that I do have in mind that I want to create someday soon is big, bigger sculptures, bigger art pieces that are maybe the size of a human. So, I want to go bigger. The space that I'm in right now won't allow for it just yet.
Right.
But as I expand Chao Studio and my work, then I plan on doing it someday soon.
Cool. So what types of, I mean, what do you see? Like, like in your imagination right now, like, how would you describe the larger kind of human-sized uh, ceramics or pottery? Would they be statues or portraits?
Um, well, that's not my specialty. It will be more organic forms because in my imagination, the way I envision my work is it's very random. There's not a certain way to really describe it except organic. Um, Very free form type of artwork and not very structured, if that makes sense.
Right. Not very structured in terms of what you plan or in terms of how it comes out.
Both. I don't ever plan my work. I don't sketch anything. I take the piece of clay and I just go in the studio and whatever comes out, comes out.
All right, that's where I want to go because it's like what goes on in your mind and heart when you're creating. If you don't have a plan, are you just going by like sensation? Are you going by how you see it as it forms? Are you how are you kind of tackling or flowing in that creative work?
It's kind of hard to describe because I don't want to say easy for me. I want to say it's just very natural. Um, my hands just does the job. And then it's a lot of people when they see my work in person, they feel different types of emotions. Like it evokes emotion because it comes from a emotional place for me.
Sure.
It's very meditating for me when I work with clay. Like I lose track of time. I zone out. I don't It's very enjoyable for me the entire process. So it's really hard to describe, but I hope that
No, it's
makes
beautiful.
sense.
That's a beautiful thing. It's very zen. It's very zen. That's the feeling from your Instagram and the way you work. It's a very zen, very meditative experience, it seems.
I would hope so. Yeah, it comes from a very emotional place. I only started doing clay because I accidentally stumbled upon it during my healing journey. I like to say I really wanted to start living my life for the first time. I know that sounds kind of crazy to say, but I didn't really get a chance to enjoy life. And
Mm.
so I finally got the opportunity to do so. And I started asking myself, what do I want to do that I would find enjoyable. And pottery was on my list of things to explore. And so I signed up for a introduction class and I fell in love ever since then. And now I'm doing it full time.
Mm. And you're winning awards for it too.
Yeah, I know that I'm still in shock about that. Still processing it.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to be recognized like that, especially by in the Stockley Gardens festival. It's really well known and becoming more uh well known in the region. So,
It's a great art show. I mean, it's my second year participating. What they do is amazing. So that really aligns with me as a person in general. So I admire Stockley Gardens so much, and I'm so thankful that they've invited me back twice already.
mhm, that's awesome. How does so you mentioned a couple times your healing journey and but how does it specifically relate to when you get in front of the potter's wheel or the clay? What are some things that do you find some kind of wholeness or sense of wholeness through doing the work while you're doing the work?
Yeah, so I tell people I'm healing through clay.
That's cool. That all right. That's I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, every time I touch clay and I make something, it's very healing for me. I used to have a difficult time with my mental health. Depression was a huge thing for me.
Sure.
And when I touch clay, it's like I said, I get lost and it's very meditative for me. It helps me process a lot of my feelings
Mm,
in a healthy way. It's not where it's repeating old past traumas or anything like that, but it's really sitting down and being able to think to myself and process difficult feelings that I used to have a hard time doing and releasing it. So that's why a lot of my work is so emotional and because I'm really in my feelings when I'm creating these things, and it's a beautiful process for me.
wow. Nice. I can relate because I discovered doodling when I was like depressed. So I doodle constantly, but it is a real for me it's like medication almost. It's something where I
Mhm.
can go to and just zone out and discover what's going on in my mind. Um,
Yeah, no, art is a wonderful thing. I That's why I highly encourage it to every adult because I come across so many adults that are like, "Oh, I want to try clay," and I'm like, "Well, why don't you? You
yeah.
know,
Mhm.
try it and have fun and tap into that inner child again because we need it more now than ever as adults because of how busy life can be."
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's good to be able to take that time and to discover it. Um, how does the idea of perfection and imperfection kind of play into what you create? Uh, do you find that when you create something that may be imperfect or that you use anyway, or does that not kind of come into your structure as far as like
Yeah,
perfect and not perfect or good or
that's a great question. So for the first time in my life, I am not controlling something. I refuse to control clay.
Mhm.
I every imperfection, I guess people would call it, I embrace when it comes to my art. Um, I feel like you create the most beautiful art when it just flows, when you
Mm,
allow it to flow, when you tap into that energy of allowing it to form itself instead of forcing it. Like I can go on Pinterest all day and I can go and find examples of works that I want to recreate, but that wouldn't feel like me. So I stay away from going online actually and finding inspiration. That's
mm,
something that I stay away from. I want to keep this art very pure because this has to do with me and my journey and what Chao Studio is about.
sure.
Because I do a lot of, I guess you could say storytelling. It's it's about my journey through life and how I've overcome a lot of obstacles,
Yeah.
and that reflects into my work. And I can't go and copy and paste other people's work and still tell that story of who I am.
Mm. So who have you become because of it?
I've become a better version of myself. I've become a healed version of myself,
Yeah.
and I do have to say I'm very proud of the person I've become today. Not only for myself but for those around me as well. It's been a very long journey.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed when, I found your tent at Stockley Garden, um, people really seem to be drawn to you in terms of like talking to you and just kind of being around, which I find that really, really cool to be able to kind of have a connection with with the people who buy your work on a deeper level
Yeah, no,
than most. I mean, there seems to be that interaction that I saw or sensed, which is really great.
yeah, it's actually one of my favorite things is from the beginning when I started at local markets near me, people would come and have a conversation with me, and I've actually always been this way.
Mm,
Um, I don't know, since I was little, like people just naturally would come to me, and I would like love to connect with people. I love to hear stories. I love to learn. That's my best way to learn is through talking with people. Um, I am just naturally, I just like conversation and
yeah.
I love like getting to know people because I feel like I feel alive when I do that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a beautiful thing to be able to spark a conversation about my art and have people tell me what they feel.
Hmm.
And 100, I would say most of the time they're very spot on about what they feel when it comes to my art and what I felt at the time when I created it.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Do you find that you go through, and I think you just kind of touched on that, like seasons of your work being a certain way, and then you kind of growing through that or getting past that into another form? Do you kind of journal through your work?
Um, there's definitely seasons when it comes to my work. It depends on what I'm working through at the time, emotional wise.
Hmm.
I do journal a lot.
Sure.
Like I said, it's really difficult to like. I honestly don't even know what's gonna come up next. I really do not.
So okay, that is where we're like, okay, you get to the powder, you get to the wheel, you get to the clay. How do you t walk me through what's going on when you're about to create? Are you? Yeah, I'll leave it at that as far as the question.
Well, it depends. I've been doing a lot of custom orders actually lately.
Okay,
So aside from that, when I'm creating freely, um, I'll get a feel. Do I feel like going on the pottery wheel today, or do I feel like using my hands and building from coil and just simple tools? So I start from there. I make the decision. If I go on the wheel, I throw whatever comes to mind immediately. If I want to go big, I want to go small.
sure.
Do I want it to be round? Do I want it to be tall? Do I want it to go out that way or this way? How am I feeling today? Am I, under the weather? Am I feeling inspired or in a good mood? It really depends, and it's crazy how when your energy is aligned, certain things bloom beautifully.
Mm,
Um, and sometimes, even if I'm under the weather, there's beautiful things that come out of it too. And it might just be a little bit more emotional. And then when I'm building with my hands, it can go, is usually that's where my work is a little bit bigger. I know you've seen my vases. Those are created from just rolling out coils by hand and putting it together.
right, right. Okay. When you're doing something for a commission or something that's pre-ordered or specifically for somebody, do you find differences in the things that you're creating? I mean, yes, it's for someone, yes, it's a commission,
Mm-hmm.
but if you had 30 mugs, are you able to tell which mug was most important or which mug expressed your ideas more? Um, do you see each piece as like an individual thing, an expression of what you're doing?
They're all an expression of what I'm doing. Most of the time, custom work, it is identical to what I've already created. I
Okay.
or sometimes depending, like for my recent order that I've been doing with my friend who's a florist, she's been giving me shapes and forms that are very simple, that is similar to my style. Um, but otherwise, I am allowed that creative freedom, or I have that touch of my, that taste of my touch.
Right.
I'm tongue twister.
That's
But
fine.
it incorporates with my style as well, which I'm okay with. But if it's something that is like completely out of my style and just not something that I feel like I would enjoy creating, I will say no. I will turn it down.
Interesting.
Yeah,
You'll
I
really
do.
turn something down if even if it was like
Mm-hmm.
a super well paid thing, you would just say
Mm-hmm.
no.
Yep.
I could do that. I wish I could do that. I wish I
I
could.
know that sounds well,
Hmm.
I'm very intentional about my art. That's the thing. Like I said, I'm very protective of it. And if it gives me a negative feeling
Yeah,
or it's something that I know I'm going to dread doing, I'm not going to do it.
sure.
It's going to burn me out. And that's something that I am avoiding, trying my best to avoid.
That's great. That's a great lesson. That's a great teaching. Um, you know, I think of the films that I've made and not wanted to make, that I wish I had said no to, or that I wish I'd said no to the way they were done, even though the source material would be amazing. It had to be done in such a way that was structured. And I wish I could have tossed that out the window in terms of like um, having a commission that said you've got to do it this way. Um,
Yeah.
Whereas in doodling, it's such a free form, no expectation thing that you can go anywhere with it and it's okay. It doesn't matter. Um, it's such a individual expression of what's going on in the moment that
Right. And it goes back to feeling free and that creative freedom.
sure.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not rich. I'm
No,
not
likewise.
wealthy. I don't come from a line of money. I'm not wealthy in that manner, but what I am is very intentional with, I just know myself. I know that if I burn myself up in my creative freedom and in my art, I'm not going to want to continue to do it long term.
Right.
And so I'm trying to keep it as pure as possible, even if that means turning down commissions that are paying big bucks. But if my heart and my soul doesn't align with it, I'm going to say no.
Yeah. And that's brave. That's really cool. That's a very brave thing to do or to state that and out of integrity and self-care that
Mm-hmm.
you're saying no to something. And
Yeah.
that's really cool. Um, so you mentioned that like you listed out the things that would make you happy, that you came to a certain point in life where you realized, you dealt with mental health and depression, which I do understand completely. Um, but was there a moment where you said, what was the moment that you found that healing enough to say, hey, I'm going to go for these things? Was there a particular time or something that occurred that really brought some freedom out for you creatively?
Um, are you saying like as far as my journey with ceramics so
Yeah,
far?
your journey as a person and the ceramics that outflowed from that. But
Mm,
for other artists, what did you find that was healing that brought you to that place? Meaning, if an artist feels blocked, who's watching,
hmm
and they're not enjoying life, what would you recommend to them? What that that brought you to a good place of the freedom to create?
Okay. So for me, prior to this, I worked in the healthcare field and I worked in the government field.
Okay.
So a typical 9 to 5 office job, and I was miserable.
Mhm.
Um, I hated clocking to my job, and I have 3 children as well, so
Mhm.
I'm extremely busy. Um, it wasn't until my husband, he actually joined the military.
Mhm.
He joined when he's typically a little bit older than what the usual age joins.
Okay.
So this was about 4 years ago. And he, one day we sat down and we're just like, we're not really happy with our jobs. We're not, we have the typical, buy a house, have the career, have the children, have the dog,
Right.
very white picket fence type of American lifestyle.
Hmm.
And we were just like, we're not happy, And so he said he always wanted to join the military. Long story short, I said, do it. Let's sell the house, let's pack up, and let's start fresh.
Wow.
So I left my career behind that I worked so hard for.
Hmm.
Um, and we ended up in Florida for about 6 months for him to do training.
Sure.
So I followed him wherever he went. And that was when I would have to say I was very humbled because I was very much so like, I worked so hard for a career to be able to support my family, and now I have no job.
Okay.
I was stripped of everything that I worked my entire life up to.
Sure.
And that was when I realized that this is the best moment or opportunity to start fresh. How can I take advantage of this opportunity? No career anymore. Um
And no desire really to go back to that.
no
Right.
desire on it. And I actually, when we moved to Virginia 6 months later from Florida, I had some time to think and reset my mind there. As soon as we moved here, I actually did have a new job. I was working at a bank, and I wasn't there for long. I wasn't there for long. It was maybe 2 months, I would say. I completed training with them.
Hmm.
And I was so miserable. I said, you know what? What am I doing? Like, I was given this blank slate. Here I am clocking back in, feeling super miserable. And I had this list of things that I wanted to do with my life or try.
Right.
And I put in my 2 weeks notice, and I did another hard decision. And I said, I'm not going back. I can't go back.
Wow.
Something's calling me that I don't know what it is just yet.
And you didn't know it was pottery at that time. You didn't know it was,
No,
you didn't know it was like that kind of creativity.
no, I didn't know. I actually started off with polymer clay earrings.
Right? Okay, I remember
Um,
reading that. Yeah. Yeah.
I went to Hobby Lobby and I bought some clay, and I was playing with it, and I would be staying up overnight, just making different things. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like I just love touching this thing.
Yeah.
Um, but then after that, I took the pottery introduction class, and I was like, okay, this is it. I finally found it. The
Right.
one medium that I've been searching for, or what I'm supposed to be doing.
What was it about it? What was it? What
Um,
appealed to you in that? Like, what was that you said this is it, rather than painting or illustration or any number of creative endeavors? What was about the pottery that did that?
so, and I've tried painting before. I tried photography. I tried all of it, and none of
Sure.
it just sat
Yeah, I mean, I get that sense
in
that
my
you were
soul.
looking into a creative career early
Yeah, so I've always tried different mediums. The thing about pottery is that it was very nostalgic for me. It brought me back to my best memories of childhood, which I don't have a lot of good memories from my childhood, but there was just this one moment in time of my childhood where it was like the best memory of mine, and I got to relive it. I got to tap into that inner child of mine where it felt very freeing. So that particular memory of mine is
on.
I didn't grow up with a lot of money. Both my parents are, they came from a different country to America with nothing. So growing up in the household of 6 children, I was second to the last. And, at that point, my parents were burnt out with, the other kids. Um, and I was that one kid that would be in my mom's garden playing with dirt. That was my toy. I
Sure.
didn't, I've never had toys. We couldn't afford it.
Mhm.
I wore hand-me-downs. But anyways, long story short, I would make mud pies and I would let my imagination flow. And it was the best childhood memories. Like making these mud pies and putting a smiley face in it. It just made my little self so happy.
Wow.
Um, and so when I touched clay and pottery, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's bringing me back to that time. And it is like, I have not felt this way in a very, very long time. So that's what did it for me.
Brilliant. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. So every time you go to the potter's wheel or just to touch clay, you're reminded of those kind of rare times of happiness where you're kind of going back to where you were and growing through that. I mean,
Hmm.
it's interesting. Like I know that when I draw, like I have a very similar um situation with you. It was like the one a really good memory of mine was like winning an art contest at a Philadelphia art museum. So it was like
Wow.
a day-long thing that my aunt and uncle took me to, and I was like 8 or 9, and I won in this contest with a lot of kids. Um, and that to me is like when I go back, I when I draw, I kind of go back to those times of my drawing kind of goes childlike, and I tend to grow through that. Um,
There's something so like magnificent about tapping into that inner child.
yeah,
It's it, speaking from experience, it's very difficult to tap into it. Um, I wasn't able to tap into it until I touched pottery, which
sure.
just brought me back in time. And it's a childlike feeling. It's so pure, it's so innocent, it's so like non-judgmental. It's you just playing. I'm playing when I'm touching clay.
That,
I'm not
that's so
I'm not
cool. Yeah.
thinking, I'm not planning, I'm not a, I'm just me.
Mm, that's amazing. That's really cool. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like self-expression to the nth degree, to the max in terms of what you're doing, which is great. Um, Recently I got in touch in that way therapeutically in terms of like a bent towards music, and there's an interesting like it's called IFS, internal family systems, where you find different aspects of yourself that you've kind of lost or
Hmm.
neglected, and you go to those places within you and you find out what's going on, why, and in doing some of that work, I found music comes to me like really easily because there was something that was blocked in that
Mm.
in growing up, but it's just amazing stuff to be able to find that place. It's so valuable for you to have that.
No, that's amazing. Yeah, I feel like mental health and art goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Um, it's like it's really sad to think about like before I found pottery, how sad my life was without
Mm,
art.
mm,
It's always been something that was calling me, but I didn't listen to it. I didn't know I needed it, put it that way. And it's just it makes me feel sad for my old self, but also very proud of me as a person to be able to get myself out of that to now into this life that I'm living today, which I'm beyond thankful for.
yeah. Yeah.
And art did that for me.
Wow. Great. And just how do you feel having an audience? Um, what's it like to have people touched by your work? Um, are you always surprised by it, or are you coming to recognize that?
I try to be humble about it. I try not to. So it goes back to me not forcing anything.
Hmm.
Um, I am extremely grateful, and I do express that to everybody that takes the time to speak to me about it. I guess it's still very new. I didn't
Yeah.
realize the conversations it would spark, the beautiful conversations and very meaningful conversations.
Mhm.
I don't, like I said, I'm trying to protect my art at all costs. And ego is a big thing for everybody.
Sure.
And I do not want that to lead my business and my art
Yeah.
at all. So I I will express my gratitude to everybody that has supported me, and I will continue to do so. And they will feel it from me. They will always feel it from me. That is what's important to me. And I'm going to trust in the process that with me being genuine and authentic to my art, that is what's going to support and set the foundation for, this long term for me.
Yeah. That's good. That's good to have and to be aware of because
I'm trying.
it's so easy to lose touch with that. It really is. Um, that's good though to see that and to be able to intent out of intent walking in that rather than in terms of the need for fame or acclaim to have it um in a humble state. Um,
Yeah, I know I'm very okay, so I'm on social media and I post, right? I post
mhm.
the content, but I am super behind on certain things. I don't like to scroll. Actually this week I
You
I
unscroll.
told well,
Yeah,
yeah, I told my friends,
you
I
scroll.
said, "Hey, I'm not going to be on social media as much, well, my personal page. And my friends and family know that. The best way to reach me is to call me. I don't mean like texting. I really don't.
Right.
Um, I so this week I have not been scrolling, or I catch myself if I scroll, I log off immediately.
Yeah.
But I post my content that I want to post to get my art out there to share what I'm making.
Hmm.
Um, but other than that, scrolling is off my list for this week. I've been running 2 miles. I wake up at 5 a.m. and I run my mile, and I'm very mindful of the foods I eat. I eat whole foods, and I try to. I'm still human. I have my times. But I am focusing on relationship and mental health with my children because my husband is still deployed. And
Hmm.
so I'm very intentional with the way I live. I don't make room for things that will cloud my creativity or my lifestyle that I'm aiming to have, which is to be at peace and to continue my healing and to feel happy and to love my family in the best way.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to see things from such a holistic point of view. I do the opposite in terms of scrolling, so I gotta learn how.
I
Uh,
was guilty of that. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong.
no, no, no.
It's very addicting.
Recently, I had because I live in kind of a yoga studio community kind of thing, and the discovery of going back to meditation and yoga, how it opens you up is just an amazing thing that I've been incorporating a lot more because I'm like right there to take a class. Um, it's an amazing thing to see your life holistic and how it protects your art or how it contributes to your art and your
Yeah,
creativity.
I'm very aware of how things can affect me. I'm a very emotional, what do they call it? Empathic person. I've
Yeah,
always been like this my whole life. If I'm not careful of my energy level and what I surround myself with or consume,
yeah,
it's going to drag me down back to depression.
I hear you.
And so I have to keep myself accountable because it's not just me anymore. I'm raising children that I want to be beautiful humans out in the world.
Hmm.
So if I don't set the example for them and walk the walk,
Hmm.
or what is it? Is it walk the talk or walk the walk or something like that?
Walk the talk,
Um,
talk the walk. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like if I don't set that example for them, I, like I have to take accountability later for how they, live their life. And I want them to feel free enough to be able to live the life they want to. And
Yeah,
it starts in childhood.
that's cool. And that's giving them something that you didn't necessarily have to the degree that you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to have. So you're giving it back.
Right.
You're making sure that they're not affected by that. That's great. One thing I noticed you're doing pottery nights where you get a group together, you have some wine, and you you create something. What is that like for you? Now, are you creating when others are creating, or are you kind of just instructing and facilitating when you do a night of like pottery and art?
Both. So it's a guided workshop. It's only 2 hours.
Mhm.
I create a template and I spend months prior to hosting the workshop to really create these templates. Keeping in mind, there are people that never touched clay, and clay can be very daunting for certain people that have never touched it.
Yeah.
So I made it very beginner friendly. I created a template. I walked through it. But I I set up the table and I walk everybody through step by step, and I do it with them because I'm a visual person.
Hmm.
So I show them visually and I explain to them verbally. And then I pause in between each step and I walk around and make sure everybody catches up. And then I help those that might need a little bit more help. But so far, everybody has walked out with a completed piece that is functional.
Hmm.
And that is very rewarding to know that I can teach people. Because at first I was like, I'm not sure if I'm ready to teach people. But then after the first workshop, I was like, okay, you know what? It makes me so happy to see adults come together, interact and mingle, and just create something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I can definitely relate. I with Doodlefest where you see artists creating together rather than just selling their stuff when they're in a room, and it's not about the competition or who draws better. It's about the almost like a fellowship or a community that comes from drawing together.
It's comforting. It's like you're enjoying each other's company. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's what it's about. And I think people forget that. And for me, I really enjoy other people's company, especially when it's positive and,
Yeah,
health in a healthy manner.
sure. Yeah, and I really kind of I have not seen any studies on it, but I do know like from the workshops I taught in doodling, people come together in a deeper way and quicker way when they're creating together. They learn something new about themselves and other people. It's not just like a social kind of setup. There's something more
Right.
that happens in the creativity. Yeah,
No, I totally agree. And then you do have the Doodle Fest coming up, which is awesome.
Friday
I'm
night.
hoping I can make it out.
Yeah, no, bring the kids. Definitely, it's going to be all day from 1 o'clock till 9. So
Oh
you're
wow.
yeah, the whole time. But yeah, I would love to see you there. That's awesome. Where do you, or final question, where do you, um, without ego, with taking the ego or the dangers of ego around, you see doing like larger pieces and human-sized pieces. Where do you want your work to be seen
Um
or experienced?
so I mean, if we're talking spirituality, I'm very, I guess you could say, spiritual. I don't really like to put a label on it.
Mhm.
Um but I along the way of my life, I get these certain visions that end up coming true.
Sure.
So one vision that I keep getting is that I feel like my art one day is going to make it to New York. I just don't know where, and I
Mhm.
know it's going to be a really big piece that I create with my hands. I guess I guess you could say I think it's going to be an installation. That's the right term. Not
Sure.
a human-sized sculpture, but a huge installation.
Hmm.
Um, but that's one
Would
thing
it,
that I've been feeling so far.
would it be something people can walk through and experience in that sense?
It'll be like a exhibition of my work.
Sure.
Um, so that's one vision that I've been getting.
Well, I find that really super interesting, like about getting a vision or a dream and how that applies to your reality.
Hmm.
Um, did it ever happen to you that you didn't see that like in vision or in a prophetic sense, you'd call it, like when the pottery thing happens? Do you think that there's anything related to that, like touching your imagination or seeing in vision what you were going to do beforehand when you first got into the clay?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, sometimes I don't even know what I'm asking here. I don't even know what I'm asking.
I
Do
kind of
vision,
get what you mean.
do visions. Let me try to rephrase this in a way that that any person can. Yeah. Just vision and imagination. How does how does it play into your work? Let's take it from that. Like, it's just interesting that you would kind of see your stuff in New York and envision that. Do you feel like that's something you're receiving or something you're dreaming up?
On the
Is
safe
that
side, I would say both.
okay?
Both because I'm a dreamer. I have very vivid dreams.
Sure.
And I know that I'm very empathic. I know I feel things that certain people may not feel.
Yeah.
I just knew that so backtracking to when I was doing the 9 to 5, it was just something that was very tugging at me that I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing this. It was supposed to be a phase in my life, but there was something more grand out there. Like
Right.
3 years ago, I remember this conversation vividly with my best friend, my closest childhood friend. I said, "Hey, I'm getting this like really intense feeling that I'm gonna be on camera. Like, I'm gonna be doing something that's gonna be on camera consistently."
Hmm.
And I remember having that conversation with her because it was sitting on my mind and I needed to get it out because I was like feeling like I was crazy because I was like, there's no way. And then fast forward to today, I have a
Yeah.
conversation with my friend. I was like, hey, I remember having that conversation with you and telling you that, something similar like this was going to happen. And now look, it's
Yeah.
happening.
Now you're on camera a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah. That's brilliant.
it's just, I couldn't fathom it at that time because I was very antisocial. I had a hard time holding conversation with people, believe it or not.
That's hard to
Um,
believe. Come on.
no, I'm
If
not kidding
you're
you.
holding conversations
I'm
you're
shocking myself. I'm shocking
that
myself.
cannot be. I cannot envision that.
I swear to you, I never could hold a conversation. I used to be a nervous wreck. I did not like talking to people. I would get super antsy.
Hmm.
I I avoided people at all costs. And as I continue on my healing journey and
Yeah.
really following that inner voice of my calling, I guess you can say,
Yeah.
it's helped me evolve into the person I am today. I have a completely different thought process. I view the world and my life in a different way. Um, and yeah, it's hard to believe, but it's the truth.
Yeah, you've basically had some kind of awakening to this, to all this that
Oh
you're
yeah, a
that
huge
formed your
awakening.
yeah, and in terms of like I've been listening to a lot of Carl Jung kind of stuff, depth psychology and active imagination, but there's a really good book uh, on it's the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if you've heard about it, but
No, I haven't.
he talks about how an artist goes on a journey and brings things their mission or adventure is to bring things into the earth that are good that people can feed from and partake of, even though it's a screenplay or it's a piece of art. It's something that um, I guess you'd call it like the higher forces, our higher selves are bringing into this mix, and I really see that in your work. It's like there's something really spiritual about it. Like I when I saw your Instagram of like I'm putting together these mugs. The what were the mugs that the I can't remember the Magnolia mug was it Magnolia mugs? Was
Oh,
it
ginkgo leaf mugs.
Ginkgo leaf mugs? Right.
Yes,
I was like,
it's
I have to
okay.
get that for a friend. I have to get that. That would be a great gift at this time for my friend. There's really something there that's very spiritual about your stocks, which so it's amazing to hear that the aspects of vision or imagination or dreams and empathetic intuition is really playing into your work to the point of that's how you began with pottery.
Yeah, I always like the moment I started pottery, because of how pure it came out to be, um, and how aligned I felt in my life, I just knew I had to, like, it was a part of my life. Like, it was something that I was supposed to step into. It was my way of, I guess, living my purpose. Because I've seen how it has sparked very important conversations with certain people.
Hmm.
Um, and I have friends that come in all ages, from younger than me to way older than me. And every time my art comes up, it's a conversation that I feel like every person of age needs to have, which is, how are you living your life?
Mm.
How are you taking the time to heal? Are you taking the time for yourself? Do you see yourself? Do you feel alive? And I feel like that's what my art is doing, is it's sparking conversations in people's lives that used to be me, where I would wake up and feel miserable and clock into a job I hated. And
Sure.
this isn't to say that everybody should quit their job, but it's to say, when was the last time you had a conversation with yourself that was very meaningful? When was the last time you felt like you were alive, or you actually were living life and life wasn't living you?
Mm. Wow, that's great. That's your book.
Well, you never know.
It's your book.
I can't predict the future,
You
but you
never know.
never know.
That's right.
So many crazy, um, fortunate opportunities have been coming my way, and I'm just rolling with it. Like I said, I'm doing my best not to let ego ride this. I'm trying to stay as pure and intentional as possible with everything that's happening, but it's happening really, really fast.
I see that. That's great. So thank you. Thanks for doing this. We're at the hour mark almost. So
Oh,
much,
really? That went
yeah,
by fast.
much, we could, there could be more. You could just yeah, I think we hit up on some really great stuff, and it's a really full. I like how you see your art in terms of the fullness of uh, psychological health, spiritual health, and family. It's really cool.
Thank you. I am very honored to be your guest today. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you for highlighting, what I do and me as an artist. So it's been a very, very great time with you.
Yeah, thank you.